have the United States who lost all moral authority all over the world. There have been a lot of sweet summer children who've been brainwashed by the United States. They're waking up. There are a lot of social democrats in Eastern Europe brainwashed by the United States that thought they was fighting a war with Russia because they care about war crimes. And now, guys, I explained many times before, I read quotes. A lot of these people are disillusioned because they're like, man, I thought Russia was the enemy. I thought the United States was standing for war crimes. Now they're just supporting Israel. I thought you guys, people are going through some things, my friends. So because they lost this moral high ground, they completely changed the narrative around the Ukraine war. The Ukraine war at first was about standing up for human rights. Remember, Gabriel? Yeah. It's standing up for tyrants. It's all about you can't have a country invade another country. You can't have a country commit mass atrocities. It went from that to they don't even pretend that is the case anymore. Now, CNN is saying the quiet part out loud. They're like, hey, guys, I know this shit not going well for us, but the military-industrial complex, they're doing well. So I'm going to play the video, and Gabriel, feel free to respond to anything you feel like. I'm going to play the video, and then feel free to respond afterwards.
Speed up missile production, condemning, quote, increasingly aggressive NATO policies, which comes as a growing list of NATO allies now say that Ukraine can use their weapons to strike inside Russia. That used to be absolutely verboten, but it has totally changed now. France, Germany, Poland, all have dropped that restriction. And for the first time today, Anthony...
I'm sorry. I was about to let it go longer than that, but I just can't help but notice this. You guys see how giddy she is? Talking about the prospect of World War III. And Gabriel, when we do this, feel free to interrupt anytime if you want to chime in. But you guys see how giddy she is? Oh shit, they had this restriction. They didn't want to start World War III. They didn't want to kill people in Russia. Isn't it great that they lifted these restrictions? You guys see the happy-go-lucky attitude. Anyway, I let it keep playing. I just can't help but make that observation. Let's continue.
Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, signaled that the United States could join them. And it comes as the U.S., of course, is ramping up weapons deliveries to Ukraine. And here's the thing about that. It's actually giving the U.S. military a major boost. And Oren Lieberman has this story that you'll see first here out front.
Just admitting it.
Just outside Dallas, Texas. Test rounds of artillery ammunition are rolling off a new U.S. production line. The goal of the U.S. is to produce 100,000 155mm artillery shells like these a month by the end of next year. This facility alone, when it's at full capacity and up and running within the next 12 months, will make nearly a third of that, 30,000 shells a month. The U.S. has committed more than $51 billion in security aid to Ukraine since the start of the war. The weapons go to Ukraine, but the vast majority of the money comes right back into the U.S. in manufacturing facilities, jobs, and production.
I think what we've seen from the lessons learned in Ukraine is that all of us, the United States, our NATO allies, need more munitions. We need bigger stockpiles. Conflicts can be more drawn out than we thought.
And when one weapon from U.S. inventories goes to Ukraine, another newer weapon takes its place.
You guys see? You guys see the game. Before, they said the Ukraine conflict was about the military-industrial complex testing the weapons out. They want to see what works and what don't work. And this is a way for them to modernize their stockpiles, stuff that neocons on both the Republican and Democrat Party was talking about for a long time. Well, essentially designed to boost the profits of weapon and defense contractors. I'll let a little bit more of it play, and I'll pass to you, Gabriel, for your overall thoughts. But feel free to interrupt anytime if you have any pressing thoughts.
To Ukraine, another newer weapon takes its place. Bradley infantry fighting vehicles sent into the thick of the fight will be replaced by the latest models of the armed and armored systems. Counter-battery radars Ukraine has used to defend against incoming fire will make way for newer radar systems. And ATACMS missiles that Ukraine has used to strike deep within occupied territory are to be replaced with advanced, longer-range precision strike missiles. As we send weapons to Ukraine, the U.S. replaces them with either newer variants or newer systems.
Look at them walk in the factory.
It is a way of modernizing the U.S. military.
That's right. I like to say we're not going to replace old with old. We're going to replace old with new. We are modernizing through the support that we're giving to the Ukrainians.
I'll pause to hear for your thoughts.
One of the things that's great about this is it's making this story about how great this is for the American economy, right? But what this really means is that they're stealing $51 billion of U.S. taxpayer money, giving it to Ukraine that's buying weapons from the weapons manufacturers in the United States. So ultimately what this is doing is it's taking $51 billion from taxpayers and giving it to the CEOs of the arms industry. That is celebrated as a great economic contribution. And at some level, it is, because this is the bourgeois press. What it's saying is that the Ukraine war is great for the bourgeoisie, for the leading ownership class and the ruling class. And it's implied that somehow this is good for American workers as well. There's a kind of implicit trickle-down economy line in this, right? That, well, if the CEOs are making lots of money, then, well, there must be making jobs and all of that. Not mentioning that this is a death industry, right?
Yes.
They kind of leave out the moral and ethical aspects of this. And so it is, it's just a celebration of an industry of death and destruction. When you think about it, right, if you had changed the CNN and you had instead something like, if it be Nazi news or fascist news or Japanese imperialist news, and you saw this from another country or at another point in time, and you listen to what they said, you, as like an anthropologist from the future looking back, you'd be like, wow, that was a warmongering society that was hell-bent on trying to make it look like destroying the lives of other people was the most economically prosperous thing that you could do. What a society hell-bent on death and destruction. What a corrupt and decadent society, if ever there was one.
And that's what China says about us all the time. Guys, they hide this stuff in our media, but Chinese media have a field day with this. When the United States left Afghanistan, you had Xi Jinping and you had Chinese officials that was like, bro, you guys spent $300 million a day, trillions of dollars on this war, and what do you get from it? You replace the Taliban with the Taliban. Do you guys know what we did in the meantime?
We built infrastructure, right? Telecommunications networks, mutually reinforcing forms of development. No, absolutely. It's like night and day. I mean, it is. It's the difference between imperialist development and anti-imperialist development in a nutshell.
Yeah, so I'm just for a second time we'll move on for this video, because I think we got a lot of the analysis. You guys see that they're mostly just another 2-minute ad. I saw someone in the comments mention how this is an ad, and it is.
Yeah.
Why do you guys think Boeing and Raytheon advertise on CNN? Do you think grandma is buying a Boeing missile? No, they do this so they can get coverage. And when they buy ads, they buy segments like these. This is essentially an ad for their products. And it's like the most corrupt thing ever. Yeah, that's why the anchor is cheering for bombs. The quid pro quo is obviously there. And this is another point I constantly hammer on our show. And you're a big theorist, and I'm trying to get there. I'm a baby in the theory at the end of the day. But this is what we talk about when we say this is capitalist central planning. Like, there's all these capitalists, they were like, oh man, I despise socialism and communism because I despise central planning. What is it when you guys have a policy where you waging never-ending war, taking an American taxpayer that go to the military-industrial complex to boost the profits of capitalists? So this is capitalists literally engaging in central planning by the government, like you said earlier, to boost their profits, which is why we argue against this chaotic form of central planning where your government decisions is made based on the profit motive and based on the amount of money you can make your donors. It's not about what's good for society. Well, it's not about we're not gonna have a central planning model based on what leads to what's the prosperity of the people. We're gonna have a central planning model based on what's gonna boost the profits of capitalists. Because for the same people who believe that this is not central planning, this directly contradicts that. This is the chaotic central planning that we oppose, which highlights every decision that they make. Every decision, like when it comes to healthcare, do they come up with a system that creates better health results? No, they create a system that leads to increased boom and profits of big pharma. Do you guys understand how the only thing that we're calling for as socialists and Marxists is a coherent central planning model? I already covered the Georgia foreign agents bill law. It's hilarious how the Western reaction. They talk about sanctions. They have lifetime bans. You had Georgia politicians that was being their life was being threatened. And when I was late on this story, I got to the story later, and I was like, all right, man, what are they proposing in this law? It must be crazy. based on the reaction. No, it's literally the same as laws that we have on the book in the United States,
Absolutely.
where you have to disclose when you have income that's over 20% from foreign sources. You simply have to disclose that.
Yeah.
And that's what the establishment melted down on. So that law that became law today. Only two they overridden the president's veto, who's French. The majority supports it. So, Gabriel, it'll be the last thing we cover. What's your general thoughts on the foreign agents bill? And is this just another symptom of Western imperialism, how they oppose their sovereignty on other states?
That's what it certainly looks like, that there's the elements of the kind of color revolution that stand behind all of this, because it follows a similar script to things that we've seen throughout the other color revolutions. And it's it's a project of trying to undermine the self-determination of a people by making them look like they're Putin's puppets again. When in fact, these are laws that are very common, not only in the United States, but in Western Europe, and I believe Israel even has a law like this. And so it's just ridiculous propaganda once again.
They call it a Russian law.
Yeah, which is absurd.
That's why I was legitimately confused at first. Like, what?
What they want to do is make sure that they can have some oversight on the U.S.-backed NGOs, which are precisely one of the principal tools that have been used historically, especially since about like the 1980s, with the founding of the National Endowment for Democracy and other organizations like this that do overtly what the CIA had been doing covertly. So these are organizations that participate very directly in coup d'etat and the overthrowing of governments. The Georgians want to be able to have the funding sources of these organizations disclosed. It's a democratic principle, and it's painted as being authoritarian. I mean, this is standard imperialist propaganda.